Welcome to the CX Down Under course preview for the 2023 AusCycling Cyclocross National Championships from Victoria Park in Ballarat. Let's check out the course. So the course this weekend is coming to you from the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung and Wurrung people. Here at Victoria Park in Ballarat. We're on board with Rob Doyle. Rob's in the blue. He's got his mate Brendan Thornton in front of him in the black. So Rob will be racing in the elite men's race tomorrow. Brendan will be taking part in men's Masters 1, a category for racers aged 30 to 34. As they come around that first hairpin corner, you can see from the ground it's already pretty muddy here. Weather conditions in Ballarat this week have been pretty typical for the Victorian town of Ballarat. If you're not familiar, it's a famously pretty cold place. Single-digit temperatures Celsius have been the norm throughout the week. It's been raining on and off, and you can see the effect that it's had on the course. These sections of pine straw that they're riding through now are really about the only dry sections to be found. And although there is still a little bit of green poking around here as the riders are practicing on Friday afternoon before they race on the Saturday, you can guarantee that by the time everyone's had a go on the Saturday, there won't be too many blades of grass that are left unmolested. So just making their way through a slippery little right-handed there. One of the corners that really is a little bit of a speed trap. You can very easily take too much pace into that corner and find yourself in a whole world of trouble. Rob just goes up past the team tents, negotiates a hairpin, now coming back down the other side. This section is a little more solid under the wheels than when Rob was travelling in the opposite direction as he makes his way around a pretty treacherous left-hander. There is not a lot of grip through there. And then back onto a straight section where he can get back on the power. So plenty of riders warming up in anticipation of the racing this weekend. Rob, being a very social young man, gives them a wave. Back through the pine straw, you can see the entrance to pit 1 on Rob's right there. And then back into the mud and the slop. So a few little back and forth corners. This course on the whole is pretty flat. There's not a ton of elevation gain with the exception of the mound, which is at the bottom end of the course, which we'll see later as Rob powers through a straight section. Brendan Thornton just makes a cheeky little pass up the outside there. Cuts in nice and tight, but you can see both riders are really having to wash off a lot of speed through there in order to keep the grip going. But getting back on the pine straw gives them a bit more of a solid platform to lay down a few watts into the long straight now. So this is the longest continual power section on the course, and it is really chopped up. You can see that the riders have already formed a lot of ruts there, even on the practice in the Friday afternoon. So this course hosted a couple of rounds of the Australian National Cyclocross Series, the highest level of domestic racing aside from the national championships, late in 2022, and the conditions were pretty much identical to this. Also very cold, very muddy, very rainy. Rob just crosses over the road and onto the gravel, so you can see that's the mound in front of him there in that stand of pine trees. So it just makes a little bit of a left-hand turn, and obviously if you're going into a nice big hill like that, what you want to do is be carrying as little speed as possible. So this section here is really heavy, really slow. I can tell from experience Rob is quite a powerful rider who has watts to spare, and even he is struggling to get a whole lot of momentum into some slightly more solid ground as he climbs up the side of the mound, puts down a bit of power, more than I can say that I have, and then just makes it over the top, and then a little sweeping left-hander here. The original draft of this course had the riders going a lot further up the hill and then pointing straight down the descent that you'll see in a couple of seconds. After some, let's say, persuasive words by some riders who were concerned about safety, it's now been changed to the current configuration as Rob just makes the sweeping right-hander. That section there was left open in terms of tape so that riders on Friday could be free to make some errors without coming to grief. Obviously that will be taped up and nice and secure for the Saturday. Good to see lots of riders from interstate here having a bit of a practice. So there were riders from Canberra around there, riders from Queensland as well. So riders coming from all over the wide brown land of Australia as Rob just points his bike straight up that technical little climb there. Although there's pine straw on top, the surface underneath is very, very sandy. So definitely takes quite a bit of skill, not only in terms of power, but technical handling ability as well, to be able to negotiate that section correctly. So Rob just comes down, splashes through a bit of the mud, and now he's making his way back towards the top of the course and the event village. So that's most of the elevation gain for the lap done and dusted now. So this course is not exactly typical of what's been seen in Aussie Cross this season. There have been 4 race weekends in the AusCycling National Series so far, one in Perth, one in Adelaide, one in Sydney, and one just outside Brisbane. All of them have taken place in bright sunshine, 20 degrees Celsius, and conditions where riders are reaching for intermediate treads or even sand tyres. Obviously, you can see from the amount of mud on this course that that's definitely not the case this weekend, as Rob makes his way through this very tricky little left-hander, and then a right straight after. That's a very, very slow section. So when there was racing held here last year, this was a section where a lot of even the elite riders would be getting off and running a completely flat section. That's almost unprecedented in Australian cyclocross. We also saw a lot of bike changes and bike washing last year. Normally, the the pits in Australian cyclocross races are pretty quiet affairs, with bike changes normally only happening in the cases of punctures or gear issues, but it definitely looks like this will be the sort of course where riders will be swapping bikes and handing them off to teammates or family members to give them a bit of a power wash in between laps. So riders who have a spare bike or can borrow a friend's or loved one's bike will definitely be at a bit of an advantage. So Rob just coming back up, another section here through the pine straw. There's still a bit of grass poking through in certain sections, but definitely the majority of the course now is pretty slick with the mud on top. So lots of riders will be reaching for nice chunky treads this weekend. I'm not personally a believer that certain weather is or is not cyclocross weather, but if you are, this is definitely cyclocross weather. Rob just comes up, you can see pit 2 there on his right. This is while the course was still being set up on Friday afternoon, so there's still a little bit of work to be done in a couple of sections, including the start straight. So when Rob gets back around there, you'll see that the finished gantry is still being erected. Rob just makes his way over a section of some pretty big tree roots actually, and then comes up to where the barriers will be placed. Obviously they're still under construction at this point, but the planks that were there are not the full height. I can tell you from experience, they are going to be the full 40 centimetres at the top of the UCI's recommended heights. And then it will just be one sweeping right-hander, and then he will be on the tarmac with the finish in front of him. So a really, really tough course, not necessarily typical for Australian cyclocross, but definitely one that's going to produce some very worthy champions. Thanks for watching.